awareness team. We have an awareness team. They are positioned at the doors as well as around the room. If you feel unsafe, if you have any problems, if there's a crisis of any kind, please feel free to approach them, talk to them. In that context, I also want to thank them right away. So thank you all for participating. I'm handing over to Helmut Krieger, the main organizer of today's event, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you really so much, Ramin, for everything. As a co-organizer, so we did the job together, and it was an absolute wonderful experience once again, and we will do it for the next lectures as well. So thank you really also so much to all our staff from our awareness and safety team. Really absolutely wonderful. You are the ones enabling us to do this lecture and public discussion tonight. And really, we just have now, it was just now to have this kind of possibility to have this connection to Francesca Albanese. So really great. Thank you really so much for lecturing, for participating, for discussing with us the war in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know, today's public discussion as well as lecture titled Genocidal War and Complicity, the war in Gaza and Western responsibilities is for sure an absolutely necessary one. And I think it's also a quite important one, given the restricted spaces we have nowadays on different universities. I think as many of you know, we are confronted with a massive wave of censorship as well as silencing by the Rectorate of the University of Vienna. And I think you know all the different examples quite well, starting at the end of October, beginning of November with a teaching series. Colleagues invited, wonderful colleagues, scholars, renowned scholars from the US, from the Netherlands. It was cancelled. The rectorate then decided to remove a statement by colleagues from the Cultural and Social Department here from their webpage. At the beginning of November, it was more or less the same time. And then we unfortunately had to, were confronted with another example of censorship and silencing by the rectorate when colleagues from the African Studies Department as well as the Oriental Studies Department decided to have a wonderful lecture course on Palestine, on quite different issues on Palestine. The rectorate decided to cancel this as well. And we have another wonderful colleague from Trinity College in Dublin who was disinvited. His invitation to the University of Vienna was cancelled. By the way, he is an expert in transitional justice. So we have a lot of examples, and definitely we do not accept this kind of silencing and this kind of censorship by the University of Vienna, or better to say by the Rectorate of the University of Vienna. And I think it is a wonderful indication that more than 100 people are outside this lecture hall as well. And unfortunately, yeah, unfortunately, we are not allowed to let them in. Otherwise, we would be absolutely overcrowded. We are now more than 160 people joining this session, and really thank you so much for joining. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to chair this session. And as you know, it is part of my seminar on Palestine at the Department of Development Studies, the open component. open for the public component of my seminar. And it's really my absolute pleasure to chair this session and to be absolutely aware of the quite important, I think, event we have now. So having that said, we are the ones now enforcing the necessity of academic freedoms, the principles of academic freedoms, and I think that is a necessary sign when it comes to the war in Gaza, when it comes to Palestine in general, and for sure, when it comes to future topics as well. So thank you really for joining, participating, and thank you for accepting our ways of housekeeping rules. So we have a wonderful and differentiated discussion in the next 90 minutes. That leads me to the format we're following. Francesca Albanese will speak for about 30 minutes, and as many of you have already read, her latest report published on the 25th of March this year, titled Anatomy of a Genocide. She, I think, will summarize, will point out the main points she made in her analysis. And then we will have a Q&A session for about 30 to 40 minutes. And Ramin will be the one having the microphone. So I think absolutely fine, absolutely great. And just a few words about Francesca Albanese. She is an international scholar, lawyer, and the author of numerous publications on the question of Palestinian refugees. And as far as I can see, you can hear me quite clearly. Yes? Fine. I think the main problem we have now, we don't hear you.
Oh, no, I was not talking. I was being quiet
Great.
for once.
Really, thank you. Absolutely great. She is, and this is the formal title, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. I have to read it. It's a very long title, so I'm very sorry. Occupied since 1967. The Special Rapporteur is an independent expert appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council to follow and to report on the human rights situation in Palestine. So thanks again so much, and I think we will not lose any kind of time. It's 6:40 now, and over to you, Francesca. Really, thanks again.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking the University of Vienna and Professor Helmut Krieger in particular for organizing this event, and for sure, of course, all the students who are there, and also the faculty members who are working and who have to continue to work to make sure that academic freedom is protected. And I'm really sorry to hear that the University of Vienna, because of a decision of the rector or anyone else, had to suspend so many events. Now I feel bad because everyone was banned from talking without me. Oh God, that's so nice. I want to be banned too. No, I'm joking. I also liked very much what was said in the beginning regarding the fact that it's even crazy that we have to tell students today, this is a place where no tolerance, there is zero tolerance for hate speech, but also do not react to provocators. It's crazy that in 2024, we have students being arrested just for their right to express themselves, their opinions, including to protest the choices, the political and economic choices of their universities. It's so confusing for me as as an adult who tries also to explain to the new generation why they need to take responsibility and then see that they are punished when they try to take responsibility and for a just cause. In terms of opening remarks, I also need to say that I always stress, especially when I go to universities and I meet with students, there might be Palestinian students among you, there might be Jewish students among you, there might be Israeli students, and this should never be a place. I expect that some of you will feel hurt by some of the arguments that we will bring to the fore, some of the words I might use. But again, take this as a space of compassion where there is no judgment, but we need to discuss what's happening together. And there is an important lesson that I always share with students. It comes from a famous philosopher, Italian philosopher, Norberto Bobbio, and his messages resonate even more loudly today. He used to say, we need to know before engaging in discussion, and we need to discuss before embracing condemnation, before condemning. So you see the level of censorship around the question of Israel and Palestine that has dominated the debate surely over the past 20 years, almost 30 years. This is absolutely new, but it didn't start yesterday. But it has not only affected academic freedom, the possibility of young people to form their critical conscience through learning, discussing, testing themselves. It has also created a chilling effect on the society, because now it starts to be documented how many people, including Jewish people, have lost their job, have been reprimanded, have been silenced, have been ostracized by work communities and families or friend communities because of their stance on Palestine. And the reason or the justification through which this has been put forward is anti-Semitism. Make no mistake, anti-Semitism does exist, and my fear is that real anti-Semitism, so discrimination against the Jewish people because of their Jewish identity, nothing else, will be on the rise. I'm really scared that this might happen because anti-Semitism exists, is real, like Islamophobia, Arabophobia, and anti-Palestinian racism are real, and they have the same matrix. We need to understand that as human beings, we are part of the same family, and we need to push back against any forms of discrimination or racism. But criticizing any state, criticizing the state of Israel, all the more because of this, its despicable performance under international law cannot be by all means anti-Semitic. One might have anti-Semitic statements against the state of Israel, but applying international law cannot be anti-Semitic. And by claiming that any criticism against Israel is anti-Semitism leads to the banalization of anti-Semitism. And when the guard lowers for any reason, this is when the trouble risks to go undetected. So these are opening remarks that I felt like sharing with you, also based on my own experience, because trust me, as an Italian who has studied very, very carefully and who has learned very, very carefully the lessons of the Holocaust, which we might remind ourselves didn't only happen because of Germany, but happened over the territories that Germany had taken control of, but it happened also in my country. Civil institutions passed judgments and passed laws that prohibited Jewish people to take part in public life, and then in education, and their life got restricted. And censorship was one of the elements. So of course there were people who were defending the Italian Jews, and they were silenced, and they were reprimanded, and they were punished. So for me, being told that I'm an anti-Semite, it burns like the most awful wound, And the fact that someone like me starts saying, okay, this is the usual allegation, it gives you the measure of how serious the banalization of anti-Semitism might become. Now, back to my report on genocide. So the anatomy of a genocide was probably the most painful report, although I'm pretty sure I said the same thing about the report I'd written just before about children, and the one right before about the privation of liberty. It's never easy to engage with the core issue of the question of Palestine. This one was difficult, though, because of the pressure and because also of the emotional and sentimental implications. I mean, the first thing that I hear from detractors and critics is, but the term is political. No, it's not political, it's very legal. Look at Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. It lists the acts that constitute genocide. Or also, how are you saying that the state that emerged from the ashes of the World War II and a genocide itself can commit genocide? But look, there is no, actually, there is a link. The trauma, if not cured, lead to horrible consequences, and no one is above the law. So the fact that the Jewish people, not the state of Israel, the fact that the Jewish people have been the victims of the European genocide par excellence, the one that took place in European soil, doesn't mean that the state of Israel cannot commit crimes. And in fact, it has committed crimes since the very foundation, since its very existence, because the state of Israel was created as a state in a land that was inhabited by another people. And I'm not judging here if the Jewish people, sorry, please, if the Jewish people have or have not ties with the state, with the land that was once called Palestine. But there is no reason that the Jewish people should kick out another people, everyone who's not a Jew. And this was true 75 years ago, 80 years ago, and even today. So today, Israel, as of the 7th of October, has intensified and escalated its violence against the Palestinian people under their rule. This has happened against the Palestinians inside Israel, which is something that falls outside what I can monitor and document, but it's fully documented by Israeli organizations. It has intensified its violence in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the instances of ethnic cleansing, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, extrajudicial executions have augmented exponentially. What has happened in Gaza, although no new, is completely unprecedented for scale and intensity. The kind of weapons that have been used as of the 7th of October, the siege that has been intensified, depriving the people in Gaza, who were already under an unlawful blockade since 2007, of food, water, medicine, and fuel. As I said, the arsenal of weapons that have been used, like just in the first weeks of the conflict, had caused the damage comparable to 2 nuclear bombs in heavily populated urban areas. And then after 7 months, I can tell you, Israel has destroyed 70% of the civilian infrastructure, half of the roads, all the fishing boats, farming land, all mosques, all universities, all 80% of the education centers, civilian buildings, the hospital infrastructure is completely gone, on top of 34,000 people killed, probably more, because there are an average of 7,000 who are missing, either under the rubble or dead elsewhere, or simply disappeared. And then over 70,000 people injured, many of them were with life-enduring wounds, in many forms of disabilities caused primarily by amputation of limbs, in most cases, which couldn't be cured, which couldn't be treated. And many more are dying because of famine, because of dehydration, because of malnutrition, and because of lack of treatment of even chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, leukemia, and heart condition. And I was in Egypt recently, traveling, including across hospitals, and there has been an increasing number of people transferred from Gaza, not just with conflict-related wounds, but with chronic diseases, which after 7 months have worsened. But also think of the incommensurable trauma caused to an entire population. To almost 1.7 million of people are homeless out of 2.2. 2 million people are on the brink of famine. And those who are dying fastest are children, because children are really easily exposed to the effects of malnutrition. I recently met and this was one of the cases that really struck me somewhat. I recently met a child in Gaza who was resting on the lap of his distraught mother, and he looks so malnourished. I thought of a child affected by rachitism, and he was shouting so loud, he was screaming and screaming, and then I understood he was in pain, because I thought that he was born like that. And then his mother, in tears, showed me his pictures. He was a perfectly healthy child, like the one who's pulling my sweater right now, and he's completely healthy 8-year-old who, because of eating animal feed for months and because of drinking unhealthy, contaminated water, developed pancreatitis. And pancreatitis is deadly and it's extremely painful. And to treat which, in Gaza, he was given morphine, the only thing that could calm his pain. So he's also drug addict right now. He had to be wind off of his addiction, and he's an 8-year-old who weighs like 14 kilos, and his skeleton is shocking, and there are so many like this. So there has been a huge destruction, huge mass killings, and both through bombs and through other less conventional means, as I was saying, incredible pain, psychological and physical pain inflicted. Imagine also seeing all this destruction and death around you, including the fact that there were soldiers posting about what they were doing, and the people in Gaza were seeing it on their phones. So soldiers exploding homes, mosques, churches, violating the intimacy of the house, exposing the lingerie of whomever whose house they entered. So it was really disturbing, the depravity that was reached. I mean, it's not unusual, because this is what happens in genocide. It was furious because it was televised in real time. And the most important finding of my report is that I said is not just the genocidal acts that the Convention on Genocide lists, the killing of members of the group, the infliction of severe bodily or mental harm to members of the group, the condition of the creation of conditions that would lead to the destruction of the group in total, in part, with the intent to cause it. Where can we derive the intent, which is critical, the specific intent, on top of the general intent to commit those acts? The fact, how did I prove that Israel had the intent to destroy the Palestinian in Gaza in full and in part? And this is what I call the genocidal logic, besides this military assault, because Israel has justified what it has done as IHL compliant, in compliance with international humanitarian law. So Israel has never denied these numbers of people dead or injured. It has said that they were human shields, collateral damage. Palestinians were ordered to evacuate and they didn't evacuate. But how can people evacuate in 1.1 million, where they have to be guaranteed access to safe zones, when even during the first weeks of this conflict, 42% of the weaponry was used in safe zones and humanitarian corridors, and so it continued. So I say there is a genocidal logic that has been hidden through the use of this IHL compliant jargon. But the principle of distinction between civilian objects and military objects, the principle of proportionality in military action. So each military action needs to have a military objective which is proportionate and justifies the possible harm done to civilians. And here we have cases where the Jabalia camp, for example, was bombed and hundreds of people died and hundreds of people were injured because allegedly there was one combatant. Also, combatants can be hit when in active combat. Here, everything has been considered targetable, destroyable, and killable. And this is genocidal logic.
Thank you really so much for this very clear and impressive analysis on what is a genocidal logic. And I think I have to say, I would love to ask you different questions about other components of the report as well, especially when it comes to the second part of our question, the issue of complicity. If you do argue that there is a specific genocidal logic executed by the Israeli army and framed by a political elite in Israel and supported by the different great powers, let's call it in that way, what is the consequence? So maybe this is a very, I know it's a quite hard question. I'm absolutely aware of that because I'm confronted with all these kind of questions as well when lecturing on the issue of Palestine. But nevertheless, I think it might be, it would be great. Hi.
Sorry. Sorry.
It would be absolutely great if you could go a few sentences further into the detail about this issue of what you raised at the end of your report, the issue of sanctions. And then for sure, I will open the floor to questions and comments because colleagues will be absolutely curious, I think, to ask you different questions as well.
Okay, so I have to say that I didn't deal with the question of complicity, which requires, which is fundamental. It's fundamental, but requires an ad hoc analysis. And I want to explain why I think that this analysis is necessary, but without throwing speculations out there, because the risk of a lack of a solid analysis, of a solid argument, creates retraction in the legal system. I mean, you might have heard about, or you might have followed the discussion before the ICJ today regarding the interim measures of Nicaragua versus Germany. There are a number of reasons why the ICJ eventually did not order interim measures, but this will be interpreted like, oh, so Germany has no responsibility, Germany has no complicity. Well, I think that these cases need to be argued as robustly, need to be documented and argued as robustly as possible. With this caveat, let me say, the reason why I recommended sanctions is not because of complicity. It's because of of course, complicity with genocide is a crime on its own under the Genocide Convention. But the point is, when there is a risk of genocide, so we do not need a judgment of a tribunal, international or local tribunal establishing that yes, genocide was committed. The Genocide Convention is one of those precious treaties that have a preventive mechanism in itself. Given the gravity of the crime, the risk that criminal acts will result in the destruction of a people in total or in whole or in part, there is an obligation on member states, given the erga omnes prohibition of genocide, to take steps, to take measures when there is the risk of genocide. This can be inferred by the Genocide Convention, but is also established by international tribunal, like the International Court, the International Tribunal for Former Yugoslavia, which recognized an obligation for member states when they have knowledge that a genocide might be committed to take all possible measures. It means that all possible measures in their power. It means that not all states will be requested to do the same thing, but it's according to the power and the influence that these states can make. So yes, Germany has and the United States have more influence than Nicaragua or Bolivia because of the economic, political, and diplomatic ties they have with Israel. So of course there is a heightened responsibility de facto on one of those states. However, my recommendation, having said that, so there should be an investigation. There is already a legal proceeding that was started against the Biden administration for genocide in a tribunal, I think it was California, in the state of California, and there was not a problem of merit, there was a problem of jurisdiction there. So the case must be continued. But there is also, it's absolutely important to remind ourselves that there is plenty of room for legal actions against both perpetrators of alleged perpetrators of genocide and those who can be complicit. The obligation, in my view, for possible the time frame for possible complicity starts with the 26th of January, when the ICJ ordered the first set of preliminary measures, because from that point states couldn't not know that genocide was plausible. And I recommended that a number of measures are taken, including sanctions, diplomatic, political, and economic sanctions, because this is what can be drawn. What else would stop Israel from undertaking actions that might result in genocidal acts? We also know that thousands of people have been killed after the 26th of January, and many more have been injured. So, for example, all the survivors that I met in Egypt, they were from events that had taken place after the 26th of January, and even after the end of March, after the UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire, also binding together with the ICJ measures, and after the Human Rights Council resolution asking for an arms embargo.
Thank you. Thank you really so much. And I do know that you have an incredibly busy schedule as well as care work. So thanks really so much. Let's open the floor to questions and discussions and comments. I think it would be not bad to collect different questions, and definitely you have to use the mic. Otherwise, Francesca Albanese will not be able to hear you.
And also Francesca Albanese is so disappointed because she cannot see you. I'm joking.
No, just what? It's what? One, two. No, it's not working. Okay, sorry.
Now it should work. Yes. So the first question.
Thank you very much for your talk. And thank you for your moral clarity on condemning anti-Semitism, but also, of course, anti-Palestinian racism, and rightly shining a light on the terrible situation in the region. My question is this, given the current student protests in a lot of places in America, Colombia, many other places, of whom very few are these anti-Semitic agitators. Most protest the genocidal onslaughts in Gaza. And of course, those who say anti-Semitic things should be condemned, obviously. But the vast majority are protesting the war and the complicity of, as they see it, America in it. So my question is, do you think for the first time this is an indication that things are changing in the perception of people's minds, and also that there will be, a Palestinian state maybe actually sometime in the not too distant future? Thank you very much.
So thank you. The
Would you like
second
to
one.
take more questions?
Yes,
okay.
I think it's absolutely fine, and I'm very, very sorry. Unfortunately, we are not able to zoom the camera, so you
No
can't
problem.
see. This is, I'm very sorry, this is the University of Vienna's technical equipment. So the second question, yes, please.
Okay. Ms. Albanese, thanks for your talk. Thanks also for your clarity and emotion when you speak. I'm sure we've all seen you speak on Twitter or Instagram, and it's very motivating, when you especially when you put down bad faith actors when they ask you questions. My question to you is, I don't know if you know Ralph Nader. He published an article last month saying that there's a severe undercount of the number of dead people in Gaza. He says that it's an undercount of probably 10-fold. So rather than 32,000, it's probably more like 320,000. And he says that because the Gaza Health Ministry lost the ability to track all the dead in the hospitals back in December. And based on the number of bombs that were the increase in the number of bombs that were being dropped since December, and I think he looked at past conflicts where there was an undercount, and then after the war ended, they found out, yeah, there were actually like 5 to 10 times more actual dead. Based on what you've seen and the interviews you've had, how much truth do you think there is to that? If there is an undercount, how much would your rough estimate be at this point? Thank you.
Thank you. So let's have another one. And I'm sorry, Ramin is quite fast, but nevertheless, the lecture hall is not a small one. Yeah.
Hello? Okay. Okay. My name is Marcela Catalan. I'm a student from this university and also organized by the Funke in Austria. First of all, thank you very much for this interesting talk. I think it's incredibly important for us as students, as young people in Austria and in the German-speaking context to have these kinds of debates and gatherings to discuss what is happening in Gaza. And yeah, really reflect about on the complicity of Western countries and institutions within the political, mediatic, and academic field. As at many other universities, we as students are witnessing the fact that academic institutions are anything but neutral spaces, but rather an extension of imperial Western politics and interests. When we talk about complicity, we as young people in Austria have to realize that these public institutions, such as our own university, do not provide a balanced discourse about Gaza or on Gaza, but rather a colonial, capitalistic, and imperial perspective. This university actively campaigns against Palestine solidarity, be it through dismissals of university staff, threats against students, and lecture cancellations, which is an open attack against academic freedom, our possibility to learn, and the freedom of expression. So as we talk about accountability and the possibility of sanctions, we should also apply these considerations to the academic field. We can follow the student protests in the United States in solidarity with Gaza. We see the proceedings and events on campus, the repression by the state which is substantially supporting the political and military line of the Israeli government. So my questions would be, how do you experience the restrictions on academic freedom and repression? Do you see these university actions as part of a political agenda? And what tasks and opportunities do you see for us as students in Austria and the German-speaking context? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you really so much. I think if you agree on that, a last one. So we have 4 different questions, or more than 4. Would that be fine for you, Francesca?
Yes, although there were 3 people asking questions, right?
Yes, up to now. Okay. And I would include another one now, if that would be fine for you.
Yes, of course. How can I say no?
Okay. That means a very, very short question, and just one question would be absolutely fine. Yes, please.
All right. I'm going to keep it really short. Quick question. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you to the organizers for making this an open event as well, because I'm not a student of this university. But my question to you, very short, is what's the process? What's going to happen next? So we know that there's something going on in the ICJ. We know that Mr. Khan's doing some stuff, for lack of better words, with the ICC. How does this move forward? I mean, maybe I'm getting impatient. I want this to end. What's happening next?
Thank you. Thank you really so much. Just one question, but a very huge and complex one. So over to you.
Okay, so thank you to the 4 people who asked the questions, because they're all very interesting. Is there a change? Yes, there is. There is a huge change, and I can tell you, it's palatable, it's tangible, it's real. And the thing that infuriates me is that it had to, a genocide had to take place. Hundreds of thousands have to be injured or scarred, or many killed by genocidal violence in order to have this awakening that was necessary. And it's, of course, it concerns Palestine, but it goes far beyond Palestine. And I will explain what I mean in a second, to answer the second question on what's happening in universities, which is also a reflex of what's happening in the large society, global society at large. The question is where this is going to lead. And I will just give you an anticipation of what I think and I'm going to say at the end. And I feel parts of my neurons being there, building what I will say at the end. No, but will there be a Palestinian state? I would say there should be a Palestinian state, meaning a place that the Palestinians can call a safe place for them to exercise the right to self-determination. The point is that this is different from the state that we have been educated to think of as of the late 80s, because especially policymakers, and I've been part of the process. If you read the first report I wrote about the right of self-determination, I was basically referring to the two-state solution, and at least as a starting point, because we are used to think in terms of division of places, part of land, partition of land. But as many young people, especially Palestinians, say, that the Palestinian state, as it has been conceived, not only it's not feasible, the post-Oslo statehood process, not only is not feasible, because in the 30 years, if one thing for all has been built, is the foundations for the permanent presence of Israeli-only colonies in what remained of Palestine, in the occupied Palestinian territory. But also, how do you create a state without without the control over the land that is going to be difficult without undoing brutally brutally, and I do not advocate for that. The premises and the foundations that have been created. So I do not call for a mass eradication of the Israeli settlers, but then a different solution is to be explored. And this is why Palestinians more and more call for freedom and rights. It's no more a struggle for a state, for a political solution, is a struggle for recognition and materialization of fundamental freedoms and basic rights, human rights, for everyone living between the river and the sea. Now, I know that for many, this slogan, from the river to the sea, equates with the annihilation of Israel, but it's not. It's a call, and this is how it's been explained over and over. It's a call for equal rights. Israel cannot exist as an apartheid state. Israel cannot exist by practicing the domination, according to the Apartheid Convention, and the subjugation of the Palestinian people as second-class citizens inside the state of Israel, and or are people without rights in what remains of historical Palestine, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. So whatever, I mean, states come and go. And there is, in international law, there is not such a thing like, there is state sovereignty, which cannot be circumvented. It's there, it's a pillar. But there is not such a thing like the right of a state to exist. There is the right of the people to exist. This for sure. But states, as I say, come and go. So the form, what political form those states or that state will take, the choice belong to the Palestinians and the Israelis. And this is what is to be the outcome of a negotiation. But the realization of rights, fundamental rights, is a precondition for that political process to happen. So I'm glad to hear, second point, I'm glad to hear that my words sound motivating. It's good to give inspirations to some coming from someone who doesn't have the strength to give, sorry, my phone is ringing. So it's interesting coming from a person who doesn't have much energy to motivate herself these days, but it's good to hear. No, I didn't know about Ralph Nader, and it sounds very, very, very scary what you just shared, because I don't have a doubt necessarily on the fact that this is the 34,000 is an underestimate. Simply because, as you rightly pointed out, with the destruction of the Al-Shifa hospital, already with the first blow that was given to the Al-Shifa hospital before the full destruction of last month, of the past few weeks, the Ministry of Health in Gaza had lost the ability of systematic towards all the deaths. There has been lost the possibilities to communicate, to monitor the diseases in Gaza for the same reason. So yes, I mean, this is why I keep on insisting there is a necessity to enter Gaza with journalists, medical doctors, humanitarian personnel, and diplomats who go and check by themselves what has been happening to the people in Gaza. But for this to happen, we need a ceasefire. So again, I do not. I would just speculate if I gave you numbers. I don't know how much the undercount is, but surely it's something extremely, extremely dangerous to me, because even these numbers, the numbers I gave you, are disputed. So it would be such a shock when the world takes fully realizes what has been done to the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza in particular. So on the third point, on the question of complicity, 100%, there is a huge sense of political mediatic responsibility toward what is happening. But I would say that this predates, especially in the West, predates what has happened in Gaza. And particularly toward the young generations, people of my generations and older have a huge responsibility. Because unlike me or unlike others of my generation who grew up knowing what Palestine was, situating the question of Palestine in the decolonization process, it was so common to discuss Palestine as a question, as an accomplished question of settler colonialism. Then, since the late 80s, the discourse has changed, has been hijacked and dominated by the political solution, the two-state solution. The conflict is over, and then yeah, the conflict re-emerges because these people don't get along, and therefore those of you who are under 30 have most likely have had most likely no opportunity to learn the history of Palestine, where Palestine comes from, and the other responsibility. And then there has been huge censorship. The other responsibility, and this is something really despicable of our system, and I speak as a Westerner. You know that I'm very severe and very critical with the part of the world I come from, also because of the pretense of higher civilization that we always exhibit here and there. But you know, if European universities had been fully honest, colonial studies would have been an imperative of every faculty and every discipline, from architecture, engineering, medicine, and last but not least, law and international relations. No discipline is innocent when it comes. Are you with me? Yes. No, I can't hear anything, but I expect that people are jubileeing as I bash the north, the global north. No, but what I mean to say is that in Europe, the reason why I am who I am, and I couldn't be anything different, is because at a certain point I went to a university which was also, we also had a program on colonial studies. I didn't even know what I had signed up for when I registered for colonialism, imperialism, and international law. The only reason why I took that class was that I adored the convener, who was an absolutely brilliant lawyer who's still a walking myth for me. But this is what changed completely my mindset. And not only I understood that the reason why many countries in Africa have their square borders is because we Europeans divided up Africa as if it was a box of candies, but also that there are legal implications, there are legal roots and legal consequences from those choices that are still enduring. So it's your responsibility today as students to be part of this awakening, reclaiming honesty in the university. And it's not just about discussing openly Gaza, it's undoing the colonial legacy, the colonial mentality, mindset. And to do that, we need to fight the colonial amnesia. And then the other more practical element is that I've said since the beginning of my mandate. I remember in June 2022, I started in May 2022. I was asked to give a speech about solidarity. What solidarity means in the case of Palestine. So I started reading and studying literature that goes outside my comfort zone, because there is nothing about solidarity other than international solidarity that is the fluffiest of international commitment. And so I rediscovered the Latin root of the word solidarity, which is solidum, and means making united, sticking together. It's a concept of togetherness. This is the moment. This is the moment to practice solidarity toward the Palestinians, but also the other people who still carries the scars of settler colonialism. And for example, universities, absolutely, I agree with sorry, you didn't tell, no one told the names, but the young lady who asked the question, absolutely, universities should become apartheid-free zones. This is for Palestine and for all the other apartheid regimes that will be scrutinized after Palestine, because South Africa gave the world the term apartheid, but Palestine is demonstrating that apartheid, is reminding everyone that apartheid can exist, is a crime that can exist in many realities. And in fact, I start to understand even better that concept, which 1 year ago was alien to me, global apartheid. When I read global apartheid, what is it? I mean, no, because the crime can be attributable to a state. No, you realize that there is a system of domination that is maintained on racial grounds by Western countries. And this is Europe, the colonial cradle, and then the sprouts, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and last but not least, Israel. So no, definitely, the universities, I mean, I really encourage you peacefully and respectfully, without giving any room to provocators. Really, you need to be as zen as possible, but you need to resist this global apartheid mentality. And standing in solidarity with Palestine today, it means standing in solidarity also with the Israelis, because they have no idea of the hole that they are digging for themselves. And this is something that scares me, because I mean, in a way, they are victims of the same system that has entrapped the Palestinians. This is what I think. And the last question is, what is going to happen next? I wish I had the crystal ball, but what I think should happen is accountability and sanctions immediately. This is a no-go. So in the best scenario, this will happen. So the ICC will send arrest warrants for all those who have been involved in the crimes on the 7th of October, after the 7th of October, and before the 7th of October, because the settlement enterprise, if you want to take one crimes committed by Israel for all, the settlement enterprise has been ongoing for 56 years, 57 years now. So plenty, but the jurisdiction of the court dates back to 2014. So all those involved in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and especially forced displacement and settlement should receive an arrest warrant. The less optimistic prospect is that the pressure on the ICC will increase to the point that no one will know anything about the orders, and this was just a rumor. So neutral, positive, negative. And also the sanctions. I think that this is much more realistic, but we need to shift the tide in our constituencies, in our Western countries. The response that Western countries are given is brutal. When I see police in Italy, in Germany, in the United States, taking down people of all ages, students and faculty professors alike, because of asking for the end of a genocide, something inside me breaks. But it also exposes the hypocrisy that has dominated the world. There is no pretense. We cannot go to Iran, to Venezuela, to claim that they are not respecting fundamental rights of freedom of expression or the right to protest anymore, because we are not even capable of taking care of protecting these fundamental freedoms. For what then? Not even for something that concerns our national interest, but to protect the genocidal state. So this is where we are.
So yes, thank you really so much for your absolutely wonderful answers. And I think you could hear the audience as well. Another, and I hope it's fine for you as well, a second round of questions and comments. And Ramin said to me, okay, we have already the first one. Can you briefly introduce yourself if you like to?
Yes, of course, no problem. Thank you very much and good evening. I would like to thank you for your courage to tell the truth and stand for it. I think that's not business as usual at the moment, as we see all around the world. I'm not student on the university. We are here for a civil organization, Palestinian Committee Österreich. We are organizing with other organizations every week protests on the street of Vienna. And I would like to invite all of you, the students and the university, to take part of this, because we need the voice on the street for the resistance against our establishment and against this genocide. And I hope we will meet soon on the streets. My question is about, we are faced with a ceasefire soon, maybe, as told in the media, and of course also a releasing of hostages. The question is in two parts. What is your expectation, or do you have any information, what the reaction of the Western world will be if Israel continues, and they have already pronounced it, the attack and the genocide? This is the first question. And what is the expectation of the global South and the Muslim world to do, if so? Do we expect that they will watch and be silent, or do we expect that they will come together and get in action? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Quite complex questions, and these were the first ones. The second ones, yes, please.
Hello, I'm from Central European University, another university here in Vienna. So thank you for your talk. I think my question is about a little bit more legal. I'm also not a legal expert, so I don't know if I'm going to formulate it correctly. But I was wondering, in regards to what you were saying, for example, to the criticism in your book, being that claims of genocidal actions from the Israeli government were founded on maybe emotional stances. I was wondering, from a legal perspective, is there an interest in the legal world to, for example, intersect these claims with other violations of the law that are going on right now in the Gaza Strip, to be able to move the legal system forward and create a space for actual effective and useful progress, let's say, to combat also the retractions in the legal system that you were talking about. In this specific case, I'm, for example, referring to what you were saying in the sense that already all the bombs that have been dropped on the Gaza Strip kind of equals 2 nuclear bombs, which is a crazy thing to think about, which, for example, could also bring forward the claim of genocidal acts in relation with ecocide, which can then strengthen and contradict the allegations that have been put forward to, refute those genocidal acts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think, yes, we have the next one. Yes, please.
I'm a socio-ecological economics master student at VU. First of all, thank you very much for your talk and efforts for clarifying the genocide in Gaza. But given the current circumstances, we have the ICJ, Security Council, and UN resolutions that were issued by the UN, the ICJ, are considered non-binding for Israel. At the same time, we have the US, UK, and EU are highly funding Israeli army, while at the same time protests and academics are frowned upon when mentioning Palestine. So when we're mentioning a two-state solution, how would you think the Israeli government can be forced to accept to negotiate such solution in a way?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We'll take one more speaker.
Okay. Ramin said to me one more, so I hope it's fine for you as well. Okay, fine.
The only thing, excuse me, the only thing I couldn't hear very well the last question. I heard there is ICJ, the UN, and then I couldn't hear after that. So sorry, can someone sum up the question?
Yeah, I can sum it up, and I hope it's fine for you as well. Yeah, it's about the issue of the prospect of a two-state solution. How can Israel be, sorry to say this is my words, be forced to accept a two-state solution?
Okay, thank you.
Hello, yeah. A question as someone who's Palestinian and someone who's Gazan. As we know, we have 85% of destruction in the Gaza Strip. But my question is about the education system. I mean, colleges, kindergarten, university are all destroyed. So it's obviously as well a war on education. So my question to you is, how do you see it about building up schools and universities? Can you say something about that, maybe? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you really so much. Over to you. I know a lot of questions, a lot of complex ones, and not easy to answer. Yes, please.
Yeah. Look, the question, what if Israel continues? It's under our eyes. Israel will continue unless and until it's stopped. The point is, we need to take the words of Israeli leaders very seriously and literally, because this is something we don't do. So every abusive or even evocative word that is pronounced against Israel is met with the harshest of criticism and opposition and obstacles, while Israeli leaders have been committing genocidal incitement since the very beginning and calling for forcible transfers since the very beginning. On October 12th, I said, under the fog of war, because this is my scholarly expertise, forcible transfer of Palestinians, because this is quintessential to their story as a people in the last 100 years. And so, 85 years. So the thing is that Israel will continue as much as possible to forcibly displace Palestinians from what remains of historical Palestine. This is my assessment. And a ceasefire might prevent this. But there has already been a UN Security Council resolution asking for a ceasefire, and it's not implemented. You see, this is also leading to the erosion, the total failure of the international system made of rules, regulations, principles, framing what is legal, distinguishing what is legal from what is not. Sorry, just a second. Hold on, I'm so embarrassed. Just a second.
So everybody can hear you now. Oh, okay.
What a shame. Well, working
it's
from
absolutely
home,
fine.
it's never an easy task. So, what I wanted to say is that this is the erosion of the system that we have to protect ourselves, and therefore it's necessary to defend it, because our states are clearly accompanying it to the detriment of the Palestinians, but also ourselves and our safety and our security. Of course, the current situation is extremely, extremely dangerous for the hostages themselves, because it's clear that the hostages have not been spared by the hell that has befell the Gaza Strip. Like, there is no food for anyone, there is no food for the hostages, there is no water for anyone, there won't be water for the hostages. Frankly, I have no idea where they are, but I hear that many of them have perished under the bombing. Because the bombs have created craters. The destruction of the tunnels, of course, has harmed the hostages. So if the priority was to save the hostages, why on earth Israel has launched such a ruthless military campaign? So this is something that our leaders should ask Israel itself. So I see no other way forward than through sanctions. What is the reaction of the global South and the Muslim world? First of all, I personally do not necessarily call the Western world. I assume you refer to the Arab world, because there is also a significant although shrinking Christian community in Palestine. There is also a Palestinian Jewish community, although it's very small. But again, we should not think in religious terms. Surely there is a greater sense of instinctive solidarity toward the Palestinian in the global south. But I wouldn't say that this is not a priority in the global north, because the huge mobilization of people, the taking the street, the solidarity, what's happening in the West. Look at Western universities, look at the US universities, for example. This is the global north, and this is our young American citizens. Many of them are Jews. So we should acknowledge them. So what it tells me is that the new generations are much more globalized in a positive way, interconnected. They appreciate humanity without borders in a way that is unprecedented, but because they are also the sons and daughters of the technological revolution, which has brought down so many barriers. And therefore, I think that global south and global north are uniting when it comes to the people. We also see that the global south, or let's say the Arab world, is on the edge now, because on the one hand, they support Palestinians, as they've always done. I mean, there has always been an unsettling solidarity toward the Palestinians. This has been my assessment years ago, and this is what I wrote about in 2020. Because on the one hand, Palestine is deep in their political rhetoric, but at the same time, the Palestinians, because of their call for freedoms and because their own political emancipation to an extent larger than that of other countries, have always been scared, like the autocracies or the regimes in the Arab world. So yes, there is support, but when there are protests in favor of Palestine, they are crushed no matter what. And this is something that, of course, I do not support, and I criticize Arab states for doing that. Then concerning the point is that the last point is that these states are not fully autonomous. Many of them are economically dependent on the choices and the diktat of the West. This is the reality. In order to push back on this, they should experience unity among themselves, but this is not the reality, and historically this has not been a characteristic of the Arab world. For example, if you read this wonderful book by Amin Malouf, The Crusaders Through Arab Eyes, you realize that historically the Arab countries have been more easily federating with and making alliances with the global north, you would understand, than among themselves. And plus, the countries who were the strongest opponents of the United States hegemony in the Middle East, and Israel as an emanation of it, were Iraq, Libya, and Syria. And without any easy judgment on these countries, whose human rights performance was despicable, at the same time they created some balance to the US hegemony and Israel's hegemony in the region, which now it goes with less checks and balances. Yes, the question of genocide solicitates strong emotional reactions, but I understand the point of exploring intersections with other crimes. I mean, together with other special rapporteurs, I denounced not the ecocide, but the domicide, the mass destruction of homes as a crime in itself. Scholasticide, the destruction of the education system. But the point is, we can find other words, other terminology. This is a collection of war crimes and crimes against humanity, but eventually, genocide is a crime on its own because it has another element, which is not just the violation of rules of war as a war crime is not just widespread and systemic attack against the population. It has an inner element that leads to the destruction of the people. So my fear is that if we do not fully appreciate today what's happening, we risk to miss the forest for the trees and not to realize that this can continue to happen and to also expand to other parts of the Palestinian people. And this cannot happen. And plus there should be accountability for what it is. Could Israel be forced to accept the two-state solutions? Well, everything can happen, but the point is that two-state solutions, I mean, cannot be a symbolic gesture, a symbolic call. What does it mean, two-state solution today? I mean, can really Gaza live separated from the West Bank or connected to bridges? Yes, ideally it could, but there should be a pacification of the reality on the ground. And so some form of transitional justice must occur, because there is no question these people will both live in that land and will both have claims to that land. We need to acknowledge what has happened as of the 7th of October, on the 7th of October and before, including what happened with Nakba. So this could be a watershed moment leading to a process of acknowledgement of responsibilities, but also of the mutual trauma without making comparisons, and the mutual pain or each other's pain, which is a huge component and totally undetected in the region. I mean, I keep on saying that probably Palestine and Israel would need less policymakers, less political scientists and lawyers, and they would need more counselors, because there is really a huge trauma that is still unhealed. And the last question, the education system, is true that the education system has suffered an incredible wound, and this is to be undone. It will take over a decade to rebuild what Gaza had, but meanwhile, I'm also concerned about that there is 500,000 kids, survivors of a genocide, have been without going to school. Many of them are forcibly displaced. So where are they going to study next year? And also those who have been displaced outside of Palestine, outside of Gaza, those who are in Egypt, for example, who's going to secure their education? Those who are in other systems. So there are so many protection concerns that I personally have, and there should be a comprehensive response to this all.
Thank you. Thank you really so much. I mean, we could continue our discussion for the next 5 to 10 hours, but unfortunately, we are already running out of time. So is it fine for you if we ask a very last question? Oh yeah,
sure.
That is an, I'm very sorry, that is an absolutely stupid question at the end. So more than 10 to 15 colleagues have raised their hands. So Ramin says to me, okay, two questions, two last ones, very
Absolutely,
short.
no problem.
Fine, great.
Thank you. My name is Imani, and I study at the VU Socio-Ecological Economics and Policy. And my question is about student protest. So I understand that we need to be Zen. And I also understand, however, that police has not been Zen and has instead been escalating violence onto students. And also that it seems like people will not listen unless violence is enacted upon the innocent and upon the protesting. And so I wonder what we can do in this environment when we are told to be Zen, but also told that violence will be enacted upon us and that only then people will listen. So is there any advice that you can give students who are maybe fearful but who want to express their feelings about this and want to come out and say that we're not okay with this, like what can we do?
I hope you could hear the question. I'm not sure.
Very, very poorly. I heard, I don't know why. At the beginning, with the first round of questions, I could hear, and now it's very hard. It's very difficult. Could you summarize for me?
Yeah. Do you have any kind of advice for students nowadays protesting and trying to reclaim the necessity of what is survival in Gaza?
Yeah. Okay.
And what can students do here in Austria? So sorry for summarizing that in just a few words. Given the fear of violence, of police repression, people were already confronted with over the last 6 months here in this country as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And the second and the last one, the very last one. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Mohammed. I'm a human rights student. I'm also from Gaza. I have a question. In the last few days, we've seen footages from a massacre happened where people were executed, civilians, near a Shifa hospital, and they were tied, and you can see clearly that they have been executed. And my question is about the international reactions. When I go to the internet, when I see that there were like barely media talking about it, and my question would be about the normalization of a genocide or actions after 7 months of consuming too much news about genocides, that people got used to it somehow. And do you think how dangerous it could be also towards the Palestinian people who are still under this threats and under this violence that's being targeted by the Israeli occupation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, these are the last ones. Over to you again. I hope you could hear the last one, the last question.
I wish, sorry, what did you ask me if I can answer or if I can take another question after this?
No, if you can answer it now.
Yeah, no, I wish I could be, I wish I were with you because it's very, very interesting, trust me. And I also feel, even if from distance, and even if the only person I see is Professor Krieger, I can feel
and
the
by
energy.
the way, I'm not a professor. I'm a senior lecturer here at the university.
Okay,
so,
Dr.
And I will never be a professor.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I mean,
Sorry to say that.
I think they understood whom I was talking about. No, but I can really feel the energy in the room, and you have to trust me. I mean, I'm talking primarily to the students. I really feel for you. I really feel for you because there is a responsibility on your shoulders that shouldn't be taken by you. I mean, as a special rapporteur, I've taken on the question of the weaponization of anti-Semitism on my shoulders, also encouraged by Jewish scholars, Israeli and Jewish scholars from all over the world who were very concerned about the silencing in academic freedom or any debate concerning Israel and Palestine. And I've known from the very beginning that the most vulnerable are the students, because professors, especially if they have tenure, I mean, what do they risk? Those who are with a precarious contract, they do risk, but at the same time, they are accomplished, they have finished their studies. While those in the US, for example, they're risking a lot. They risk to lose their scholarship. They risk to have thrown away 1 year of their education. And I see the difference between the undergraduate and the master students, because I have students supporting me from Columbia University, for example. They are master students, and they are less courageous than their peers, at least not all of them. But I can see so the most vulnerable are exposing everything they have. So what I think should happen is to continue to make this movement grow. And again, they cannot arrest us all. for resisting peacefully, for asking for the application of international law. And I hope that those who protest will be able to take their mothers and their fathers and their colleagues and their community. I mean, the protest in the street, in a way, needs to grow instead of lowering down. Of course, I know that summer is coming, or exams are coming. But for me, and this is something I keep on saying, privilege is something that when you have it in a situation like that, in the time of genocide, we are compelled to renounce to it so that another people doesn't have to lose it all, because this is what was happening to the people in Gaza. And so yes, I mean, like any system, any regime, I mean, imperialism somewhat tend to protect itself, tend to preserve itself, and will continue to fight because it feels it feels the ground shaking. It feels this tsunami that has been created by the young people, despite the political covering that has been, the political sheltering that has been granted to Israel, and despite the media, the poor work that media have done. So no matter what, these young people are still resisting. So, I mean, my word is just keep on doing that peacefully and respectfully without acting upon provocations. To the question Mohammed raised, Mohammed, I know, I have the same fear that there is a normalization of genocide, but I also think that this is an illusion. That is, I mean, people want, I mean, the political echelon wants us to believe that the situation is normalized, and this is why sometimes we don't hear, sometimes we keep on hearing things, but believe me, people indignation and sense of revolt keep on growing. I see it because I also have a privileged position, so I see what's happening in different parts of the territory, different countries. I'm connected to different communities who notice these changes, and these changes are cracks on the wall. But again, there is an opportunity, there is the tide is changing, but it's not won over. So we need to continue to, again, resist with all possible means from all paths of life and in all capacities we have, in order to, to make justice closer and possible. I can't hear a thing, huh? Just in case you were uploading, I can't hear a thing, but I assumed.
So really, thank you so much. And I think it is now an absolutely clear statement by the audience as well. Thank you really so much. It was really a wonderful and so impressive talk. And let's keep up with all the necessities. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also sorry for the interruption. But again, I mean, it is what it is. Life.
But you were absolutely brilliant in dealing with these kind of challenges. So,
yeah, with throwing objects at my jumping child in my back. It's been, yeah, however, this is not the first time, and what can I do?
Thank
I'm
you.
a mother of young children. Voila, after all. And before he destroys the home, I have to say goodbye and look forward to the next opportunities. Stay strong, stay strong. You're not alone. And this is what I can tell.
Thank you.
Voila. Do you want to say hi? Yes, this is my 8-year-old child. All right, all the best to you. Bye-bye.